You're watching the free version of Silhouette Essentials. For projects and footage, head to BorisFX.com for the premium download.
So for the last part of this class, we're going to paint the eyebrow here. We're just going to bridge that little gap in eyebrow. So first we're going to track this area, and I've already done that just to save a little time. I'm just going to go to the Roto node for my final, click the eyebrow track, copy, and paste this into the Roto node. So we take a look at the track here. Let's just turn that on. I just made a shape on this keyframe, and I tracked with translation, scale, and rotation. So it kind of falls apart at the end, and I did try to track over and over. And my rule of thumb when I'm tracking is just about 5 minutes. If I can't get it to work, then I'm just going to do some manual painting at the beginning of the shot. So let's go to the paint node here, and we're going to use the dual clone brush, or the clone brush in dual mode, I should say. So I'm going to make sure that these buttons are unchecked because we don't need to use mattes for this painting. To make my brush a little smaller. And I'm going to go to a frame where it's pretty clear. You see that I scrub back and forth in my timeline all the time? It's because I'm always analyzing the shot and trying to decide what to do, where to start, and that kind of thing. Okay, so I'm probably going to start around here because I can see the eyebrow clearly. So I'm going to make a paint stroke. So the first thing I'm going to do though is click dual, and that's going to enable me to use 2 paint strokes at the same time at a 50% opacity. So I'm going to mix my 2 paint strokes together. We'll make 1 stroke here, shift for my offset, and then we'll go to the 2 and we'll make our other stroke and paint that. So now you see that the gap is bridged, and I have these 3 brushes right here. So pink is where it's going to paint, and you can see the offsets on either side. So then this is just like auto paint. We'll go to auto paint window here. I'm going to select my eyebrow track. I'm going to do my whole range and see how that works. All frames, match move is selected, and then we'll click play. And let's take a look. So that did a pretty good job. It kind of falls apart at the end, but I can hand paint those frames and do a little touch up along the way if I feel like I need to do that. So I could probably use a little more paint. I can just do this again. Go back to the first frame here, make my brush a little bit smaller. Okay, so that's filled in the gap a little bit better, and then we can just go to the head of the shot and paint this by hand to the end. I'm going to turn off dual, click 1, otherwise I would be using the other clone source. Make sure I'm on the same frame. Actually, I'm going to use the frame, the last good frame, as my source here. So probably around this frame here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag in some of the eyebrow just to fill it in. And once I get a frame I like, I'll use that as my clone source. So then we can just use that frame ahead of us and just paint. We might have to make some micro adjustments along the way with our arrow keys. So I'm just lining this up by clicking caps lock and up and down with the arrow keys. I'm switching in between the clone tool and the drag tool for whenever I need it. And I try not to use the drag tool too much because I find it really softens the image. I really enjoy this kind of painting, and it's a good skill to have because you can do these quick fixes right away. Okay, so that part's done. Okay, so we have our final node tree here. We have our source, inpaint, roto node, and the paint touch-ups, and the rest of the paint. And here's the alpha threshold node. If I go back to the paint node and look at the alpha, there's some soft areas. And then just to fill those in, I've added an alpha threshold node. And then we have our output node, but we don't need to render anything out. We just need to close the plugin. And here we are back in Nuke. We have the original here, and we have our paint here. So now we're ready to go for the next steps. And you can see that the alpha is intact if we want to use it. I would definitely encourage you to explore integrating the Silhouette plugin into your Nuke workflows. This is the end of Class 4, where we tackled 2 marker removal shots with a focus on procedural techniques and a couple different ways to facilitate your manual painting skills. I hope you enjoy learning about the inpaint node and the Silhouette plugin in Nuke. See you in the next class.